almost everything you do in life will count towards your diabetes and your blood sugar, from stress to sleep to altitude to illness to if you ate a cheese stick at lunch, right? All of those things will impact your blood sugar in some capacity. And there's 40 plus things that impact blood sugar in general. So if this is something that will end up impacting you positively, it doesn't have to be an active thing. You're like, hey, I used to like writing poetry, right? If someone likes to do that, go for it. If it makes you happy and you get to go into your zone, even if it's a short time frame, it will pay off massive dividends. You will be so much happier. And if you can find it. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today's is something that I think we forget about all the time as people with, or even people without diabetes, but it is even more imperative to discuss if you live with diabetes, and it can absolutely decimate your blood sugars, but also just make every aspect of life seem a lot harder than it actually needs to be. And so recently, I was starting to feel kind of that sense of burnout, but not necessarily burnout from a diabetes sense, more so just burnout from everything, right? Just because I, full transparency, did not take any sort of holiday break, which was my own doing. I did it to myself. And I'm the first one to admit that. And I know that I probably should have done some sort of break, but I didn't. So alas, that was an issue. So ultimately, here's the situation, right? So there's a little bit of burnout, there's a little bit of stress from that. And Amelia and I had planned for a very short weekend away, a little bit of a long weekend, take a Friday. And of course, still going to do a little bit of work here and there, but a little bit more time than normal to just be off per se. Holy cow, that could not have come at a better time, because not only did I come back relatively refreshed and relaxed, but I think it really drilled home for me, and hopefully this will, be able to resonate with you as well. It really drilled home the importance of taking that break in life in general. And sometimes there's seasons where you may not be able to, right? There's seasons where things are really demanding. Maybe you've got a family with kids and you have to take care of them, and you've got a million things going on professionally, and this, that, and the other thing are all converging at once. And you've got seasons where you've just got to go. And I'm the first one to say I'm in one of those seasons right now. But at the same time, you still have to be able to work on stress management and do things you enjoy, because stress will absolutely decimate your blood sugar. And there's no nice way of putting that at all. Stress will absolutely decimate your blood sugar. And I'm not even talking stress about diabetes, right? Stress from outside things will decimate your blood sugar. I've gone over that on this podcast before. I know I have. I absolutely know I have. But I really want to just emphasize it, because here's the thing, right? Of course, we've talked about, cortisol, and cortisol will raise your blood sugar up because it's telling your body, hey, break down protein into glucose because the body needs energy. It needs it now, fight or flight, all of that. But just the general concept of taking that true break and relaxing and breathing and having that outlet is a very big deal. And so that weekend, what it really did for me was it said, hey, I'm still going to do some stuff. I'm not going to do as much as I normally would, but I'm going to let myself just and go into a different environment. And sometimes that's all you need, right? Sometimes all you need is, hey, you're used to being at home, you're used to being in your routine, and you just have to be taken out of that routine a little bit in a new place where maybe the demands are slightly less, and suddenly you feel reinvigorated. But the big thing about this is we're kind of in that awkward time of year where I never understood as a kid why we didn't actually get them, but why a lot of people would get President's Day weekend, long weekends, why we get those little breaks. And I'd be like, well, it's only 6 weeks after winter break. Like, why do we need a break? You absolutely need a break at that point. And we're starting to get close to that time frame again. I'm still convinced that the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday should be a national holiday, but that will probably never happen. I digress though. I think the big thing here is really focusing on managing stress. And I'm going to go into a couple ways that I do that, but I really just want to make sure that it is something that is on your radar, because this time of year, you've had the holidays. So they were close. They weren't that close. They're not that close anymore. They're, 4 weeks, 5 weeks away. in the past. And so now you're in that grind, you're in the muck, you're doing a million things. You're probably going 100 miles an hour, pulled in every single direction. If you're not paying attention to yourself, that is going to pay off very handsomely in a not good way for you. So here's the big thing for you. So with this, first things first, stop and breathe. If you're having a stressful day, yes, it's going to impact your blood sugar. Yes, you've probably seen that. You have to stop and breathe. And literally, just letting it out and realizing, hey, I'm going to center myself. I'm going to be present. I'm going to do those things that I need to do to be mindful to make sure that I'm not getting carried away into whatever situation I'm in right now. Because the more you can stay centered and composed, number one, you'll do a better job at whatever is stressing you out. Again, whether it's professional, personal, whatever, it will be better. The outcome will end up better. But second off, it's something it took me a really long time to figure out. And I still fall victim to this. But what does the stress do positively? If you're like, hey, if I hit my worry quota, it will get better. It doesn't usually work that way. If you're stressing out about something, by putting that energy towards it, it's kind of just, it's if you're in physics class and you say, okay, energy is never created nor destroyed. You're basically, it's a ton of energy that's going to nothing, right? It's going to nothing and you're just letting it out. It's just boom, you lose it. It goes elsewhere, but you don't have it anymore. And so people end up exhausted because they're, oh my goodness, I'm so stressed. Oh my goodness, stop, breathe. Center yourself, clear your mind, and really just focus on breathing. So one of my favorite things I do is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. We're in for 4, hold for 7. I'm not going to demonstrate that part. And then breathe out for 8 seconds, like an 8 count, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that does calm your nervous system down. So instead of the fight or flight, it'll start to relax you after you've done it a few times. But what's nice about this method, what I really like about this method, is the fact that you are able to do it anywhere and people are not going to notice. If they do, it's probably because they're doing it themselves, but they're not going to notice what you are doing and why you're doing it. But you can still do it. And you could be in a meeting, you could be on an airplane, you could be in a car. It doesn't matter where you are. You can do that anywhere. And that I think will really help to just center you and bring you back. And the second thing I really want to emphasize here is you have to have a couple outlets for said stress. You have to be willing to carve out time for yourself, even when it feels nearly impossible. Even if you're thinking, Ben, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I go to my job after I've gotten my kids off to school, and then I have to pick them up, and then they've got activities, and then I have to get some sort of workout in for myself, and then I have to prep dinner, and then I have to make sure they go to bed, and then I have a couple minutes to breathe. Okay, you've got a couple minutes to breathe, and you might say, easy for you to say, you don't have kids. And no, I do not have kids. So that makes it a little, different on my end. But what I can say is even with all of that, you can go for 14 straight hours. Find that little pocket of time for you. And maybe one of those is your workout, right? Maybe you've got 40 minutes to squeeze in some sort of workout where you're going to do a bunch of supersets and get your work in for strength and feel good, boost your insulin sensitivity, but do something else, even if it's 15 minutes. Okay, I've got 15 minutes at nighttime. Am I going to meditate? Am I going to journal? Am I going to read? Am I going to do something that relaxes me? Whatever that thing is, are basically irrelevant, right? Because everybody likes something different. But by intentionally carving out that time for yourself, that is going to be the biggest thing that I can emphasize. And again, this is universal. It doesn't matter whether this is, February, whether this is October, whether this is July, whatever time of year it is, you can use these general principles if you are starting to have the stress of life seep into everything else, and you can just start to notice it in your blood sugars, because you will notice it there. It's one of the first places you will notice it. Those stubborn highs that will not come down. But you have to carve that time out for yourself. And it's something I emphasize with patients constantly. Like, hey, I've got this going on and that. And the other thing, I'm like, when are you going to focus on you? And not even, it does not have to be hours on end. Oh my goodness, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do 2 hours of journaling and painting and this. You don't have to do it like that. It can be little tiny pockets. And then maybe on the weekend, you get a full hour to just decompress and relax. But you've got to do something. Because otherwise, again, think about it before. I was talking about how, when you're stressing out, you're basically just burning energy for the sake of burning it. Okay, cool. I've got all this energy. I'm expending it over nothing. It's not changing anything. It's not doing anything. It's getting expended. It's like basically the equivalent of leaving your car on in the garage. Hopefully it's open, but you're leaving your car on and it's just running. It's going to burn through all the gas eventually, and it's not going anywhere. It's just sitting there. It's idling. It's the same type of situation. And so in this case, with all the stress, what you have to do, worrying is one way to technically expel it. Then eventually you get so exhausted that you just stop stressing as much. And the irony is it really doesn't completely work like that. You end up stressing anyway. But on the flip side, as the stress is coming in, by having that outlet, you're not letting it just show up and start to pack in and fill in every gap in your body and just make it so, holy cow, I'm completely stuffed to the brim full of stress. And now I'm going to release it, like a giant holding tank. And now you're going to release it. If you're constantly letting it go, if you think of yourself, in terms of stress, you're a sink, right? If the sink's plugged up and it's just filling up, eventually it's going to flood. You don't want that. What you want is to say, okay, hey, there's some stress coming in, I'm expelling it. Stress coming in, expelling it. And this way, again, it's not going to be perfect. There's always going to be some stress coming in, but by allowing it to get out of your system, it's not going to build up and lead to a potentially bad situation, panic attack, etc. And within diabetes land, right, we already have a higher propensity of having anxiety. We have a higher propensity of having depression. These are things we have to be paying attention to, and they're not sexy. They're not fun, but they're so important because they drive everything else. And mental health is a huge thing that people do not talk about. And I am fully in belief that, if you're like, hey, my thing, I want to consider doing therapy, I am totally on board. I think every person on this planet would benefit from a therapist, at least in a semi-regular capacity. And maybe that's one of your outlets, right? Maybe one of your things is, hey, once a month or once every other week, I'm going to have an hour with a therapist and go through some of the stuff going on to see how I can have better skills to handle some of the situations that are thrown at me. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think it's really brave, number one, because you're saying, hey, I've got this. I need to attack it head on. And I know I need some outside support, which can be absolutely critical to achieving what you want to achieve. But then on the flip side, it's also a way to expel some of this stuff from your system. And by expelling that from your system, again, you're not allowing it to build up until it gets to a point where it explodes, because that is not what you want. And as you're carving out this time, right? So we've talked about carving out some time for you, even if it's something as small as 10 or 15 minutes in the evening or in the morning, right? The bookends of the day tend to be the most flexible in terms of stuff you can get done because they tend to be the most steady. But on the flip side, okay, we've talked about that. We've talked about, hey, got to have some outlets. One ideally is exercise in diabetes land and health land, but you've at least got another potential thing. I personally meditate all the time. I love it. I think it's incredible. And it doesn't have to be super, super hard. I did used to think it was really like, why would I meditate? This is goofy. This is woo-woo. This is weird. And now I do it almost every single day. And I could not be more grateful that I am. So don't knock it till you try it. And it's one of those things, I do it for 5 minutes a day. It's not like you got to sit there, you're like a monk in a temple and doing it for an hour at a time. Like, you don't have to. You can go longer if you want. But again, meditation on an airplane, in a car, not while you're driving, but hey, you're a passenger in a car, meditate, done. It does not have to be complicated. But the other thing too is, yes, you have your outlet, you have time for you, do things you enjoy as well. That's part of it, right? That's part of the game, is that carving that time is for things that you enjoy. Maybe you like making music, right? Maybe you like doing something artistic. Maybe you're writing a book and it's a fun hobby for you, but have something that you do, because this was something that I heard someone else discussing and it made me think. And I was like, holy cow. So they were talking about, hey, different aspects of life, etc. And they're like, okay, what is one thing you're passionate about doing that does not involve your professional life or, your family life? What is one thing you really enjoy that you get excited about that you do on a consistent basis for yourself? And I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. I genuinely do not know if I have one of those things, which it's painful to say, because I'm out here. I'm like, hey, I want to work with people with diabetes. I want to help make the diabetes world a better place. And so almost every single thing that goes through my filter in life is, how can this help benefit people with diabetes? And as a result of that, I haven't done a great job of staying balanced. And that's probably why at times I end up in the situation where, yes, I've got some anxiety and some stuff where it comes up for all of us. And so I think really having something you enjoy at the forefront of your life is going to be extremely important. And maybe it's something you used to do, right? Maybe it's, hey, I used to get a lot of joy out of playing volleyball. I did. I played volleyball up through high school, played some sand tournaments in college. I haven't done volleyball in forever. I would love to go play volleyball. That's something that I could say, hey, let me go out and do that, because it's something that I enjoy doing and I like, and it's fun. And it's just elicits that level of, hey, I'm doing this and I'm present. I'm here. I'm in the game. That's all I'm paying attention to. And with that too, because you're so present and whatever thing you truly enjoy and can engross yourself in, all of the stress and all of the anxiety and all of the, potential mental health detriments disappear, because you can only be present and focusing on that one thing in that moment at that time. You're playing volleyball, the ball's up in the air, you're about to go, spike it down on the other side. That's all you're paying attention to. You're not thinking about, oh, did I leave my backup insulin at home? Is my kid behaving themselves? Did I do that assignment for school? You're not thinking about that while the ball's up in the air. If you are, you're probably not playing very well. So finding that thing that forces you to be present is a challenge that I have for you over, once you watch this episode or listen to this episode. I want you to find that thing that you enjoy, that keeps you extremely present and ultimately leads you to be centered and all the other things that I just talked about, right? That's what I want to challenge you to do. And that may not seem diabetes related because it's really not. But at the same time, it's wild because you will see the positive impact, the trickle down impact that it has on your diabetes, because all of these things do count, right? Almost everything you do in life will count towards your diabetes and your blood sugar, from stress to sleep to altitude to illness to if you ate a cheese stick at lunch, right? All of those things will impact your blood sugar in some capacity. And there's 40 plus things that impact blood sugar in general. So if this is something that will end up impacting you positively, it doesn't have to be an active thing. You're like, hey, I used to like writing poetry, right? If someone likes to do that, go for it. If it makes you happy and you get to go into your zone, even if it's a short time frame, it will pay off massive dividends. You will be so much happier. And if you can find a creative outlet too, right? If you're able to, using both sides of your brain is absolutely an incredible blessing. But this was something I just wanted to bring up because I know we're in that awkward time, remember, like I said, where the holidays weren't that long ago, but they were, long enough ago where you could have that little feeling of burnt outness, not just from diabetes, but from life in general. And I just want to make sure you have time to say, hey, I'm going to recenter myself. And I'm really going to make sure that I make a concerted effort, nothing crazy, but just a few extra minutes to find that outlet if I don't already have one, and to really make sure I'm putting that time aside for me so I can do the things I want to do for my own happiness, which then leads to better blood sugars, leads to better family life, better professional life. It leads to better everything. So that's my 2 cents for you today. I'm very grateful for you being very grateful for you spending some of your day with me. And if you love this episode, if you love the podcast in general, please drop a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you are listening. It would mean the world to me. Of course, share it with a friend if it's something that you think someone else may find valuable. And if you need support, if you're like, hey, I want my blood sugars to be better, I want to get my A1C to where I want it to be, not necessarily where my care team wants it, but where I want it, where I feel my best and I'm not restricted by my diabetes. My team and I are here to help. Happy to support you. We're all dietitians. We all live with type 1 ourselves. We all have exercise backgrounds, and we would be very grateful to be a part of your journey. So if that's you, holler at me over on social media at Man of Zeal, MANOFTZEL, on Instagram, TikTok, etc. I'll catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.